Everyone at Greenhaven Court believed Dana Wells had stopped paying her HOA fees. The proof seemed to be everywhere. Her name was on the meeting room screen. Victor Lang had 3 months of unpaid assessments in the association ledger. Celeste Rowe, who managed resident accounts, confirmed the balance in front of 40 neighbors. Even the boxes outside Dana's apartment made the accusation feel official. A locksmith stood beside the new deadbolt, while management employees placed Dana's files, clothes, and desk lamp against the hallway wall. Victor gave her one final chance. Sign the payment agreement, surrender the old key, and management may restore access after the first installment. Dana held up her bank receipts. These transactions cleared. Victor took the top page, looked at it for less than a second, and let it fall. The association has no record of receiving them. That was the sentence everyone remembered. It was also the first statement Dana could prove was false. She picked up the receipt and pointed to the transaction confirmation. The money had not merely left her bank. Greenhaven Court's system had accepted it, assigned it a timestamp, and then moved it under an internal code, ERF7. Victor called it a processing label. Dana asked why a processing label had removed the payment from her account without returning the money. He did not answer. Across the room, an elderly resident named Ruth Calder opened a notice she had kept hidden in her purse. Her missing payment matched Dana's down to the dollar. Same week, same penalty, same 4-character code. The neighbors had entered the meeting believing Dana was trying to escape a debt. Before the night ended, Dana understood the truth was more dangerous. Someone inside Greenhaven Court was manufacturing debts. And whoever had chosen Dana believed a woman who lived alone, avoided community politics, and could not afford a long legal fight would leave before she learned how many others had been chosen too. That Monday morning, Dana still believed the problem would take 10 minutes to solve. She was working at the small walnut desk beside her living room window when the first delinquency notice arrived. Dana opened the envelope, read the balance twice, then checked the address to make sure the letter belonged to her. It did. Unit 4C, Dana Wells. 3 months past due. Dana had built her life around not owing anyone an explanation. Every invoice for her freelance accounting business was scanned, labeled, and backed up before the paper copy entered a file drawer. She opened her banking portal and pulled the 3 HOA payments. January 3. Cleared. February 2. Cleared. March 4. Cleared. Each transaction carried the same confirmation prefix and the name Greenhaven Court Association. Dana printed the statements, then opened the resident portal. The portal showed the payments as missing and added late charges, legal review fees, and an emergency compliance assessment she had never received notice of. She downloaded the page before it could change. Then she wrote to Celeste Rowe. Celeste had managed resident accounts for 4 years and rarely answered before deciding what an answer might cost. Dana attached the bank confirmations and typed a short message. These payments cleared. Please correct the ledger and confirm removal of all penalties. Celeste replied 11 minutes later. The official account remains delinquent. Please bring any supporting documents to Monday's resident meeting. No explanation. Dana sent a second message asking whether the confirmation numbers had been checked against the association's deposits. This time, Celeste did not answer for nearly an hour. When the reply came, it contained only one question. Do you maintain copies of these records outside the resident portal? Dana read the sentence again. It was an odd question. Not whether the documents were genuine. Not whether the bank could verify them. Celeste wanted to know where Dana's copies existed. Dana saved the entire email thread to an external drive. At 5:30, Victor Lang called. Dana, he said, with the careful disappointment of a man preparing to sound reasonable in front of witnesses, the board has reviewed your account. There is nothing to review. The payments cleared. The ledger disagrees. Then the ledger is wrong. Victor let a small pause pass between them. I would advise you not to come into Monday's meeting with that attitude. Dana looked at the printed bank confirmations beside her keyboard. I'm coming with records. And I'm trying to spare you unnecessary embarrassment. That word stayed with her after the call ended. Embarrassment. Not correction. Not review. Not investigation. Victor already knew what the meeting was for. Dana stepped into the hallway to collect her mail. Near the elevators, a dark van marked Lang Property Restoration occupied 2 visitor spaces. The engine was running. 2 men sat inside eating from takeout containers. A temporary sign on the wall announced that 4th floor waterproofing had been completed that morning. Dana looked up. A brown stain spread across the ceiling outside Ruth Calder's apartment. A drop gathered at its lowest edge and fell into a plastic bucket. Ruth opened her door just far enough to see who was standing there. "Did they send you one too?" she asked. "Send me what?" Ruth's hand tightened around the door. Before she could answer, Victor came around the corner carrying a folder. His expression softened the moment he saw Ruth, but his eyes moved first to the bucket, then to Dana. "Mrs. Calder," he said, "we've discussed leaving containers in common areas. It's catching the water." The contractor completed the work. Dana glanced toward the stain. Then the ceiling didn't get the message. Victor's smile held for a second too long. "This is exactly why the board has to protect property values," he said. "Residents see one cosmetic issue and assume mismanagement." The men in the restoration van had not left their seats. Ruth lowered her voice. "I wanted to ask Dana about my account." Victor shifted closer to her doorway. "Celeste can answer any billing questions." Ruth looked at Dana, then at Victor. "I suppose it can wait." Her door closed. Dana stood alone with Victor beneath a repair that existed only on paper. "You should be careful," he said. "People here become anxious when someone starts suggesting problems they don't understand." "I didn't suggest the leak." His gaze moved to the envelope in her hand. "Monday, 7 o'clock. Bring your documents." He walked away. Dana returned to her apartment and placed the 3 bank receipts into a white envelope. She printed the resident ledger, the email exchange with Celeste, and the notice of delinquency. Then she backed up everything again. Years earlier, Dana had found altered expenses inside the books of a manufacturing client. 2 co-workers had brought the entries to her privately and asked her to verify them. When management demanded names, both denied ever speaking to her. Dana lost the contract. The false entries remained until another audit exposed them 18 months later. Since then, she had kept her work precise and her relationships limited. Numbers did not panic. Numbers did not protect their jobs by pretending they had never met you. Numbers were safer than people. Dana wrote 2 words across the front of the envelope. "Paid in full." She believed 3 cleared transactions would be enough to correct a mistake. She had not yet understood that no one at Greenhaven Court had made one. At 8:12 on Monday morning, Celeste Rowe opened the delinquency report and found Dana Wells highlighted in yellow. The color had not come from the accounting software. Victor Lang had added it himself. He stood behind Celeste's chair in the HOA office while she scrolled through the accounts marked for special review. "Move Dana to the top," he said. Celeste did not turn. "Her bank confirmations are valid. The ledger says otherwise." "The ledger says what we told it to say." Victor's hand left the chair. Celeste opened Dana's account. 3 payments had entered Greenhaven Court's operating account on time. Each had been reassigned within 24 hours to the Emergency Restoration Fund. FCPN. The resident balance had never been reduced. "She is an accountant," Celeste said. "She is a freelancer who lives alone and skips every meeting unless it concerns her directly. That does not make her careless. No, it makes her predictable." Victor placed a printed agenda beside the keyboard. Under Resident Compliance Review, Dana's name appeared in bold. "You're putting her account on the screen? People understand consequences when they can see them. They may ask why you are discussing a private balance publicly. Then remind them that every unpaid dollar is carried by the residents who do pay." The sentence sounded rehearsed. Celeste had heard versions of it for months. Victor opened a blue folder labeled Unit 4C. Inside was a notice restricting Dana's access pending an emergency safety inspection. It authorized management to enter and secure the apartment. Celeste checked the signature line. "Victor Lang, Board President." The timestamp showed 7:46 a.m. The meeting would not begin until 7 that evening. You signed this already. I signed a precaution. You have not inspected her apartment. The inspection will happen when management enters. And if her receipts check out, Victor returned the notice to the folder. Then we correct the account after she signs the compliance agreement. Before Celeste could answer, Marcus Lang entered with a coffee cup and a new invoice. He dropped it beside her keyboard. 4th floor waterproofing. Final billing. Celeste read the number. LRI 4418. The previous month's vendor register contained LR 4416 for the same floor, the same labor hours, and nearly the same amount. This looks like the same work. It isn't. The description is identical. Marcus leaned closer. Then changed the description. Victor took the invoice. Process it through emergency restoration, he said, and leave Dana's balance where it is. The residents are asking why the ceiling still leaks. Residents ask questions whenever they see a bucket, Marcus said. That doesn't mean they understand construction. After the brothers left, Celeste opened the audit panel. Her employee credentials appeared beside Dana's transfers, but the approval field contained Victor's administrator code. She moved the cursor toward export. Footsteps returned in the hall. Celeste closed the panel. At 10:05, Dana's follow-up arrived, asking Celeste to trace the confirmation numbers beyond the resident ledger. Celeste understood that Dana had followed the money past the public account view. She answered with a question that could pass as routine. Whether Dana maintained copies outside the resident portal. The answer would tell her whether Victor still controlled every version of the records. Across the hall, Victor was speaking to the property manager. 2 boxes are enough, he said. Files, clothes, something visible. We are not emptying the unit. We are establishing control. Celeste stared at the office wall. This was not enforcement after a hearing. It was a scene prepared before Dana entered the room. At 11:40, Ruth Calder appeared at the office window holding a folded notice. Celeste recognized the amount before Ruth placed it down. It matched the amount missing from Dana's account. I think there's been a mistake, Ruth said. Celeste opened Ruth's ledger. ERF 7 appeared beside the adjustment. Behind Ruth, Victor entered the lobby. Celeste closed the account. Bring this to the meeting tonight, she said. Ruth glanced back at Victor and folded the notice smaller. By noon, Celeste had 2 names on her screen, 1 duplicate invoice under her keyboard, and an access restriction signed 11 hours before Dana would be allowed to defend herself. At 5:18 that afternoon, Dana copied her statements, portal downloads, and every message from Celeste onto an external drive. She placed the drive in her work bag instead of the white envelope she intended to carry openly. The envelope held the papers Victor expected to see. The drive held the versions he could no longer change. The meeting was less than 2 hours away. The decision had already been made. At 6:54 p.m., Dana entered the Greenhaven Court meeting room carrying the white envelope in one hand and her work bag in the other. 40 residents sat in rows facing a projector screen. Ruth Calder occupied a chair near the aisle, her purse clutched against her knees. Aaron Blake stood near the coffee table speaking with 2 board members. Victor noticed Dana immediately. Miss Wells, he said, loud enough for nearby conversations to stop. We'll address your account under resident compliance. I requested a ledger review. You'll have an opportunity to speak. At 7 sharp, Victor called the meeting to order. He moved through landscaping updates, parking complaints, and a brief report on completed waterproofing. Then he changed the slide. Dana's name appeared above Unit 4C and a balance of $3,842.16. The amount included regular assessments, late penalties, administrative charges, legal review, and a compliance fee she had never seen before. Victor faced the residents. Greenhaven Court depends on shared responsibility. When one owner refuses to meet her obligations, every responsible owner carries the burden. Dana stood. I paid every monthly assessment. You'll speak when recognized. You placed my name on the screen. Victor extended one hand, inviting her forward as though the meeting were fair because he had allowed her to cross the room. Dana opened the envelope and placed 3 bank confirmations on the table: January 3rd, February 2nd, March 4th. All cleared to Greenhaven Court Association. Victor picked up only the top page. These are personal banking records. They contain the association's confirmation numbers. Celeste sat at the end of the table with her laptop open. Did you trace them? Dana asked. Celeste kept her hands beside the keyboard. The resident ledger shows no credited payments. That wasn't my question. Victor pushed the receipts away. The pages separated, and one fell near the front row. The association cannot authenticate documents produced by a delinquent owner during a compliance hearing. They were produced by my bank. Aaron spoke from the 3rd row. My fees went up twice this year. Why should the rest of us keep covering people who don't pay? You are not covering my payments, Dana said. That's what everyone says when they're behind. Some residents nodded. Others avoided her eyes. Victor announced that Dana had until 5 o'clock Friday to accept a payment plan before her account entered collection. Anyone listed as delinquent at that deadline would also be removed from the eligibility roll for the special vote scheduled that evening. Dana had not known a billing dispute could erase her voice before anyone examined the payment trail. Then the meeting room doors opened. The property manager entered with another employee, pushing a cart. On it were 2 cardboard boxes, Dana's brass desk lamp, and 2 file cases from her apartment. Her body went cold. What are those doing here? Management secured Unit 4C for an emergency inspection. Victor said. You entered my home? Your account is in serious violation. A locksmith appeared in the hallway holding a new deadbolt package and Dana's old lock cylinder in a metal tray. Dana moved toward the door. The property manager blocked her. You cannot enter until authorization is restored. My client files are in there. Then resolve the account promptly. Victor said. One box had been closed over the sleeve of Dana's winter coat. The other held kitchen items wrapped in one of her own towels. This was not an inspection. It was a warning arranged for an audience. Victor slid a stapled agreement across the table. Sign tonight, surrender the old key, and make the first payment. Management may restore access tomorrow. Dana read enough to understand it. The agreement required her to admit the debt, pay legal charges, waive claims related to the lock change, and accept future access restrictions. She closed it. No. Victor held out his hand. The key, Miss Wells. Dana removed it from her ring and placed it on the table. Then she bent to retrieve the fallen receipt. Beneath the payment confirmation sat a transfer notation she had not seen on the bank version. F7. She checked another receipt. The same code. When Dana straightened, Ruth was beside her. The older woman unfolded a notice from her purse. I paid mine too, Ruth said. Victor leaned forward. Mrs. Calder, this is not your account review. Ruth pointed to an adjustment line. Dana compared the figures. Ruth's missing payment matched hers exactly. The adjustment had been posted on the same date. ERF7 appeared beside it. Dana looked at Celeste. Celeste's eyes moved toward Victor's hand resting near the laptop. That glance answered more than her emails had. Victor began talking about separate accounts and unrelated processing errors. Dana placed Ruth's notice beside her receipts and aligned the transaction dates. Same amount. Same adjustment. Same destination. The boxes in the hallway no longer looked like the end of the dispute. They looked like the first thing Victor had done because he was afraid she might keep looking. Dana returned the unsigned agreement. I'll need a copy of the full ledger. Victor gave a small laugh. You are in no position to make demands. Then consider it notice. She left the key on the table, but took every receipt with her. Dana spent Monday night on Ruth Calder's sofa with her work bag beneath the coffee table and the white envelope beside her. At 6:20 the next morning, she opened her laptop and built a reconciliation sheet. Column 1. The date each payment left the bank. Column 2. The date Greenhaven Court received it. Column 3. The date the resident ledger should have credited it. Column 4. Any transfer code between those points. Dana entered her own transactions first, then Ruth placed her statements on the table. The fourth column filled itself. Erfsieden. Ruth watched her type. Where did the money go? Into a fund called Emergency Restoration. I never agreed to pay into that. You didn't. Your regular assessment was moved after it reached the HOA. Ruth's account showed the same sequence as Dana's. Payment received, internal transfer, balance left unpaid, late fee added. The amount transferred from both accounts matched a vendor charge posted 2 days later. Lang Property Restoration. Waterproofing Evaluation, 4th floor. Dana searched the vendor summary. A second invoice appeared the previous month with nearly the same description, labor hours, materials estimate, and amount. The invoice numbers differed by only 2 digits. Ruth leaned closer. Is that normal? Not unless they evaluated the same leak twice and forgot both times to fix it. The bucket outside Ruth's apartment was still catching water. Dana printed the invoices and placed them side by side. One had been marked inspected and approved. The other had been processed through ERF7. At 8, Ruth led Dana down the service stairs to the basement. Luis Ortega was unlocking the maintenance cage. He had worked at Greenhaven Court long enough to know every recurring leak and which elevator button jammed in humid weather. He also knew when a question could cost him his job. Dana showed him the invoices. Was the 4th floor waterproofing completed? Luis glanced at the security camera above the laundry room door. You need to ask management. I did. They put my belongings in the hallway. His expression shifted. Marcus brought 2 men last month, he said quietly. They took pictures, moved a ladder, then left. No repair? Not the one listed there. Dana indicated the second invoice. And this evaluation? That job number isn't in my weekly log. Can I see the log? No. Then he added, I can show you today's work order. Luis opened a clipboard inside the cage. Near the bottom, Dana saw an entry dated 6 weeks earlier. 4th floor ceiling stain. Source not isolated. Contractor access incomplete. Beside it, in different ink, someone had written, closed per board instruction. Dana copied the wording. A drop struck the concrete behind them. Water had gathered along pipe insulation above an electrical service box. Has that been inspected? Dana asked. I submitted 3 requests. Can those requests be edited? Anything in that system can be edited. The basement door opened. Marcus Lang came down carrying coffee. He stopped when he saw the invoices in Dana's hand. Residents aren't allowed in the maintenance area. Neither is unfinished waterproofing, Dana said. Marcus looked at Luis. You busy? I was opening the cage. Then keep doing that. He turned to Dana. The board has told you how to resolve your account. My account paid for work your company didn't complete. You accountants always think matching numbers means you understand the job. No. It means I know when the same job was billed twice. Marcus's smile disappeared. Then he looked at Ruth. Victor mentioned someone might help with your financial situation. A buyer. Quick closing. No more fees. Ruth reached into her purse and handed Dana a folded letter. The offer had arrived the same afternoon as Ruth's delinquency notice. It valued the apartment far below recent sales in Greenhaven Court. I almost called them, Ruth admitted. I thought selling might be easier than fighting. Dana did not tell her what to do. She asked only, did they know about the debt before you told anyone? Ruth looked back at the letter. I never told them. Dana checked the return address. The company name was unfamiliar. Marcus watched the letter change hands. You should be careful about giving advice outside your license. I'm not giving advice. What are you doing? Reconciling. By noon, Dana had 2 resident accounts. 2 near duplicate invoices, 1 unfinished repair, 1 altered maintenance entry, and a purchase offer timed to a debt that should not have existed. She drew a line beneath the first 2 names on her spreadsheet. Dana Wells. Ruth Calder. Then she created a new column. Property offer received. She was no longer asking only how to clear her own account. She needed to know how many names belonged beneath Ruth's. By Tuesday afternoon, Dana had stopped treating ERF7 as an isolated accounting error. She needed more accounts. Ruth gave her the names of 3 residents who had complained privately about unexplained penalties. Dana approached them one at a time, beginning with facts instead of accusations. She showed each person only their own statement and asked the same question. Did this payment leave your bank? The first resident, Mr. Holloway from 2B, said yes but refused to provide a copy. I'm not getting involved, he said. Victor already reduced one of my penalties. Why would he reduce a valid penalty? Mr. Holloway looked toward the hallway camera. Because I agreed not to make trouble. He closed the door. The second resident, Nina Patel, invited Dana inside but kept checking her phone. Her account showed a payment transferred to ERF7 2 days after it cleared. Nina had received 3 collection calls and a notice threatening suspension of her parking privileges. She emailed Dana the statement, then asked that her name not be used. The third resident had already sold. Ruth remembered that a company called Cedar Rock Holdings had purchased the unit less than a month after his delinquency notice. Dana added the sale to her spreadsheet. By 4 o'clock, 6 accounts displayed the same sequence: payment received, internal transfer, resident balance left unpaid, penalty added. 4 of those owners had received purchase offers within days. The amounts were not identical, but the structure was. Someone had chosen the accounts. Someone else had made the transfers look routine. Aaron Blake found Dana and Ruth at a table near the mailboxes. You're collecting private financial information now? He asked. Only from residents who volunteer it. You're frightening people. I'm showing them their own records. Aaron folded his arms. Victor says the board is correcting a software migration issue. Did he explain why a software issue sends money into an emergency fund? He said you don't understand the accounting system. Dana turned the laptop so he could see the transaction columns. I understand enough to know that 6 unrelated residents cannot pay the same association, have the money moved under the same internal code, and all become delinquent by coincidence. Aaron barely looked. Greenhaven needs stability. People are already worried about resale prices. Dana closed the screen. That sentence keeps doing a lot of work for him. At 4:37, Celeste emailed a formal notice on behalf of the board. Dana was ordered to stop contacting residents, stop copying association records, and stop making statements that could damage Greenhaven Court's reputation. The notice described her reconciliation sheet as unauthorized financial analysis. Ruth read the phrase twice. Can they forbid you from looking at statements people give you? They can write that they can. The next message came from Victor directly. Meet me in the management office. Alone. Dana went, but recorded the time and location in a secure note before entering. Victor had placed a fresh copy of the payment agreement on the table. This has become larger than it needed to be, he said. You arranged that. I can reopen your unit tonight. Dana let him continue. I can remove the late fees, the legal review charge, even the underlying balance. If the balance is valid, why would you remove it? Victor leaned back. Because litigation costs everyone. I haven't threatened litigation. You're circulating allegations. I'm reconciling transactions. He tapped the agreement. Sign this. Stop contacting residents. Withdraw your request for a ledger review. You get your apartment back, and the board considers the matter resolved. Dana read the added paragraph. It prohibited her from distributing account comparisons and required her to acknowledge that any irregularities resulted from resident misunderstanding. You want me to say the error was mine. I want you to stop creating panic. And Ruth? Mrs. Calder has options. Do those options include selling? Victor's expression did not change, but his thumb pressed against the folder. That is not your concern. Dana slid the agreement back. It became my concern when you used the same code on both accounts. Victor's voice lost its polished patience. 5 o'clock Friday. After that, delinquent owners come off the voting roll. Collection files go out Monday morning. No exceptions. Donna stood. You just offered me one. She left the unsigned agreement on his table. That evening, she searched the public business registry using the names from the purchase offers: Cedar Rock Holdings, North Vale Residential, Greenhaven Renewal Partners. 3 companies. 3 names. 1 mailing address. Dana compared the address with the vendor registration for Lang Property Restoration. The street was different. The registered agent was not. She did not yet know what the connection meant. But Victor had offered to erase a debt he insisted was real, and 4 residents had received purchase offers after money disappeared from their accounts. Dana added a new heading above the spreadsheet: Who benefits if they leave? By Wednesday morning, Dana had 6 names, 4 purchase offers, and 1 question she could no longer ignore. Why these residents? She opened a new spreadsheet and built 3 lists. The first contained every owner whose payment had been moved into IRF 7. The second came from the voting eligibility notice Victor had distributed. The third came from the purchase letters Ruth and the others had received. Dana sorted each list by unit number. The same names kept returning: Ruth Calder, 3A; Nina Patel, Chinchide; Martin Holloway, 2B. 2 owners who had already sold. Dana Wells, Quatry. 6 residents with disputed debts. 6 residents removed or scheduled to be removed from the voting roll. 5 who had received purchase offers. The 6th was Dana, whose apartment had been locked before Victor knew whether she would sign. Ruth stood behind her at the kitchen table. What does it mean? Dana added 1 more column: Estimated equity. She used recent sales records and information the residents had voluntarily provided. The pattern sharpened. These aren't the poorest units, Dana said. They're the most profitable ones. Most of the targeted owners had lived at Greenhaven Court for more than 15 years. Their mortgages were small or fully paid. Several were older. 2 lived alone. None regularly attended HOA meetings. They chose people they thought wouldn't fight, Ruth said, and homes they could acquire below market value. A knock interrupted them. Helen Price waited outside with a canvas document bag pressed against her coat. Residents knew Helen as the former HOA secretary who had resigned after a public argument with Victor. For years, people had repeated his version. Helen had become bitter after losing influence and walked away. Helen entered without removing her coat and kept the document bag on her lap. I heard you were asking about the Emergency Restoration Fund. Dana closed the laptop halfway. Who told you? Aaron asked whether I remembered the vote. Which vote? The one that supposedly gave Victor authority to transfer regular assessments. Dana opened the electronic minutes from the resident portal. Section 8 authorized the board president and account manager to redirect resident payments during urgent repair needs. Helen read the paragraph once. That language was never approved. She opened the bag and removed a bound notebook, printed drafts, and a signed attendance sheet. The original resolution allowed the board to collect a separate emergency assessment after written notice and a recorded vote. It did not authorize anyone to move ordinary payments or leave resident balances unpaid after the HOA received the money. Dana compared the pages. The first 7 sections matched. Section 8 did not. The portal version contained 4 additional sentences. At the bottom, Helen's signature appeared beneath the certification. Helen touched it with 1 finger. That signature came from the roof access resolution. I signed that 6 months later. Ruth stared at her. Why didn't you tell anyone? I questioned vendor payments. Victor said I misunderstood the accounting. 2 board members backed him. And residents accused me of creating conflict while property values were falling. So you resigned, Dana said. I told myself leaving meant I refused to help him. Helen looked at the altered minutes. It also meant no one remained inside the room asking for the paper copy. Her admission did not make her heroic. It made her useful. Dana photographed every page and returned the originals to Helen. Keep these away from the HOA office. Then she overlaid the delinquency list with the purchase offer dates. In most cases, an offer arrived within 72 hours of the first penalty notice. One buyer had submitted an offer on Unit 2B before Mr. Holloway received his official delinquency letter. The buyer knew he would be under pressure before he did. Dana created a timeline. Payment received. Money transferred. Debt created. Voting rights suspended. Purchase offer delivered. The sequence repeated. At 11:16, Luis called from the basement. The leak spread overnight. Dana, Ruth, and Helen went downstairs. Water had reached the concrete above the electrical service box. Luis had placed another container beneath the pipe, but moisture was darkening the wall behind the panel. I shut down the outlet line, he said. Management told me to restore it before residents complain. Who? Marcus. Luis showed Dana the work order screen on his phone. The inspection request had been changed to completed at 9:02 that morning. At the same minute, Marcus's company submitted another emergency invoice. Helen looked from the screen to the wet wall. They're billing the danger while it's still happening. Until then, Dana had been building a defense against a false debt. Now the records showed something larger. Victor was using manufactured balances to silence owners, steer sales, control votes, and keep money flowing to work that existed mainly in invoices. If the board approved the new collection rules Friday, he would gain more leverage over the residents he had already selected. Dana returned upstairs and printed the 3 lists on separate sheets. She held them together against Ruth's window. The names aligned through the paper. The delinquency list was not a record of who owed money. It was a map of who Victor intended to remove. Dana picked up her phone. We're not asking for corrections anymore, she said. We're challenging the vote. By Thursday morning, Victor had stopped treating Dana as a resident with a disputed account. He was treating her as a threat that needed a label. A notice appeared in every elevator before 8. Unauthorized collection of resident financial information. It warned that an unnamed owner was circulating incomplete records, pressuring elderly residents, and damaging Greenhaven Court's reputation. The notice did not print Dana's name, but it quoted a line from the reconciliation request she had sent the board. No one needed help identifying her. At 8:17, Dana received a formal email accusing her of copying protected HOA data and interfering with association operations. Attached was a revised meeting schedule. The special vote would begin at 7 on Friday, 30 minutes earlier than announced. Registration would close at 6:45. Any account still marked delinquent at 5 would remain ineligible. Victor had not moved the deadline that created the list. He had shortened the time available to challenge it. Dana saved the notice, the schedule, and the email headers. Then her phone rang. It was Claire Benton, the owner of a medical supply company whose books Dana had managed for 3 years. I received something strange, Claire said. An email asking whether I knew my accountant was facing collection action. What exactly did it say? That you had produced unreliable financial records for a housing dispute. The message had no signature. Claire did not fire her. She asked for an explanation. Victor had found the pressure point Dana protected most carefully. The trust clients placed in her accuracy. I can document every statement I made, Dana said. I believe you, Claire replied, but somebody wants me not to. After the call, Dana sat without touching the keyboard. The boxes beside Ruth's wall proved Victor could reach her home. Claire's voice showed he could reach her work as well. For 1 minute, walking away seemed less like surrender than survival. Then Ruth placed her own statement beside the laptop. 1 false balance had become 6. Dana opened the draft audit request. Until then, she had planned to submit it through the residents as a group. She added her full name, business address, and a declaration that she had prepared the comparisons from records voluntarily supplied by their owners. Ruth read over her shoulder. That gives him someone to blame. He already chose someone. At noon, Ruth received a courier envelope. Inside was a revised purchase offer from Cedar Rock Holdings. The amount was slightly higher, but the acceptance deadline was Friday at 12. A handwritten note said the buyer could resolve all outstanding association charges at closing. Ruth placed the pen beside the papers. If I sign, at least the debt goes away. The debt was created to make signing feel like relief, Dana said. I know that now. Knowing doesn't make me less afraid. Dana did not ask Ruth to be brave. She showed her the 6 disputed accounts and asked for one more day. Ruth folded the offer without signing it. In the basement, Marcus found Louise photographing the moisture behind the electrical panel. "You were told to close that work order," Marcus said. "The wall is still wet. Then dry it. I'm maintenance, not magic." Marcus took the clipboard from his hand. "Where's the old log?" Louise said nothing. "If board records disappear, the person assigned to them will answer for it." He left with the clipboard but not the bound notebook Louise had hidden inside an unused filter cabinet. Before leaving the basement, Louise photographed the wet wall from 3 angles and sent one image to Dana. The timestamp would matter if management later claimed the danger had been repaired. Upstairs, Celeste received a different instruction. Victor entered her office carrying a flash drive and a printed checklist. "Archive the current ledgers," he said. "Purge obsolete audit entries before the weekend backup." Which entries are obsolete? Anything connected to temporary ERF transfers. The checklist listed Celeste's employee account beside every transaction category. Victor's administrator approvals were absent. Under it sat a draft incident report stating that Celeste had exceeded her authority, misclassified resident payments, and concealed the errors from the board president. Victor's signature line was already completed. "You wrote this before the entries were deleted," Celeste said. "I prepared for every possibility. You prepared to blame me. I prepared to protect Greenhaven Court." When he left, Celeste reopened the audit panel. Deleting the entries would erase the easiest path to Victor's approvals. Refusing would tell him she had stopped obeying. She photographed the purge request, the checklist, and the draft report. Then she inserted her own drive and copied the access logs. At 4:38, Dana submitted the formal demand for an independent audit, preservation of electronic records, restoration of disputed voting rights, and suspension of Friday's contract vote. She signed it herself. Minutes later, Victor replied to the full resident list. The meeting would proceed. Dana added the message to the evidence folder. Victor believed shortening the schedule would isolate her. Instead, he had given every frightened witness the same deadline. At 9:10 on Friday morning, Aaron Blake knocked on Ruth Calder's door with his mother's statement in his hand. Dana had never seen him look uncertain. "My mother's payment is missing," he said. Ruth opened the door wider but did not invite him to explain away what he had said at the meeting. Aaron placed the statement on Dana's spreadsheet. The transfer date fell within the same week as the others. ERF 7 appeared beside the adjustment. His mother had also received a purchase offer from North Vale Residential. "I told her Victor was protecting the building," Aaron said. "I told her the fees were probably her mistake." Dana checked the company address. It matched the other offers. Aaron looked toward the boxes still stacked near Ruth's wall. "I was wrong." "Yes," Dana said. He waited for something softer. It did not come. "What do you need me to do?" "Call the residents who listened to you." Aaron left with 6 names, and the responsibility to tell each one that the man he had defended had targeted his own mother. At 10:25, Louise arrived through the service entrance carrying a plain grocery bag. Inside were copies of maintenance logs, work requests, contractor access records, and 3 photographs of the wet wall above the electrical panel. He had added a handwritten index so the entries could be read without him explaining every abbreviation. "The original notebook stays hidden until the meeting," he said. "Are you prepared to confirm these are accurate?" Louise looked at the timestamp on the latest photograph. "If I stay quiet and that panel fails, I still made a choice." Helen came next. She brought the original meeting notebook in a fireproof document case and a sealed statement describing when each version had been created. She had also located an email she sent Victor 2 years earlier, objecting to changes in the emergency fund language. He had replied with 3 words. "Already handled." "Thanks." Helen read the message one last time before adding it to the file. "I spent 2 years calling my resignation a protest," she said. "It was an exit." At noon, Ruth's purchase offer expired unsigned. No one celebrated. Ruth simply placed it beneath her delinquency notice and wrote the time across the top. At 1:40, Celeste sent Dana a message from an unfamiliar number. Laundry room. Building C. 10 minutes. Celeste stood between two silent washing machines with a flash drive in her coat pocket. I made the transfers, she said before Dana could ask anything. Victor approved them. Marcus benefited from them. I knew residents were being left delinquent. Dana did not offer absolution. Celeste seemed relieved by that. I kept the ERF label because the first transfer frightened me. If I removed every trace, Victor could say I invented the entire process. You still kept doing it. Yes. Celeste handed over the drive. It contained the approval logs, the purge request, the draft incident report blaming her, and exports showing when Victor's administrator account authorized each transfer. Why now? Dana asked. Because he wrote my confession before deciding whether I would confess. Celeste agreed to attend the meeting and verify the records. She did not ask Dana to hide her role. She asked only that the evidence be presented in sequence before Victor could turn the room against her. By 3, Aaron had secured 9 additional statements. 4 came from residents who had dismissed Dana on Monday. 2 included purchase offers. 1 came from a man who admitted Victor had promised to reduce his penalty if he stayed away from the special vote. Helen found the older bylaws in her files. A disputed eligibility role could be challenged if 20% of owners submitted documentary evidence before registration closed. The chair would then have to suspend any vote dependent on that role until the dispute was reviewed. They needed 23 signatures. At 4:31, they had 21. At 4:46, Nina Patel signed. At 4:57, Mr. Holloway arrived with his bank statement and became the 23rd. The 5 o'clock deadline passed with Dana still marked delinquent. Dana divided the evidence into 3 folders: transactions, governance, and safety. Each claim had a source, a date, and a witness. No single page had to carry the whole case. But Victor no longer controlled the only list that mattered. At 6:44, 1 minute before registration closed, Dana entered the meeting room beside Ruth, Aaron, Luis, Helen, and Celeste. Victor looked first at Dana. Then he saw who had come with her. His prepared remarks were no longer enough for the people standing beside her. At 7 o'clock, Victor Lang called the special meeting to order. He did not acknowledge the 23 signed challenges on the front table. Instead, he began with Dana. Before we proceed, the board must address a campaign of misinformation led by a resident whose account remains seriously delinquent. Dana stood beside Ruth near the aisle. Aaron, Luis, Helen, and Celeste had taken separate seats. Victor continued. Miss Wells obtained private financial material, pressured vulnerable owners, and circulated conclusions without access to the association's complete records. Any irregularities are software errors or actions taken by an employee outside her authority. Celeste looked down. The board president did not authorize improper transfers. Every vendor contract was approved. Every enforcement action followed policy. This meeting will not be hijacked by someone angry about the consequences of refusing to pay. Dana carried the first folder forward. I'm asking that your statement be entered into the minutes exactly as you said it. Victor frowned. Which statement? That Greenhaven Court never received my payments, that no improper transfers were authorized, and that every enforcement action followed valid policy. You are not recognized to make a motion. I'm asking whether you stand by the facts you gave the room. Back? Yes, Victor said. I stand by them. Dana opened the transactions folder. She began with her bank. The January payment left her account on January 3rd. Greenhaven Court's banking record accepted it the same day. The confirmation number on Dana's statement matched the HOA deposit reference. February and March followed the same path. The association received all 3 payments, Dana said. The resident ledger did not credit them because someone moved them after receipt. Victor called that an interpretation of incomplete system labels. Dana displayed the internal entry. F. Seaton. Nina Patel confirmed the same sequence on her account. Mr. Holloway did the same. Ruth placed her statement beside Dana's. 6 residents. 6 cleared payments. 6 internal transfers. 6 balances left delinquent. Victor called it a migration error. Dana moved to the vendor records. 2 waterproofing invoices from Lang Property Restoration carried nearly identical descriptions, labor hours, and amounts. Both had been paid. Luis's maintenance log showed the work was never completed. Marcus rose from the sidewall. "You don't understand contractor billing." Luis answered, "I understand whether anyone opened the wall." He held up the original notebook. No crew completed that repair. The access record shows 1 visit for photographs. The leak was marked closed by board instruction. Victor said Luis was not an engineer. Dana placed the time-stamped photographs beside the invoices. The wall was still wet yesterday. 1 paid inspection covered the electrical service area. Residents began asking questions. Victor struck the gavel. "This is a billing dispute, not proof of board misconduct." Helen carried the governance folder forward. "This is." She opened the original meeting notebook to the Emergency Restoration Fund resolution. The original resolution authorized a separately approved emergency assessment. It never allowed the board to divert ordinary payments. The electronic minutes contained 4 additional sentences. Victor studied the pages. "Those drafts are unofficial." Helen placed the signed attendance sheet and her old email beside them. "My signature on the electronic version was copied from a roof access resolution dated 6 months later." One board member asked whether another meeting had approved the change. "No," Helen said. Dana then presented the eligibility roll and purchase offer timeline. The residents whose payments had been moved were the same residents removed from Friday's voting list. Most had lived at Greenhaven Court for years and held substantial equity. 5 received purchase offers within days of becoming delinquent. Mr. Holloway's offer arrived before his official notice. Victor called the overlap coincidental. Marcus stepped forward. "Those buyers are legitimate investment partners." The words landed before he understood what he had admitted. Dana looked at him. "Partners with whom?" Marcus turned toward Victor. Victor seized the microphone. "My brother does not speak for the board. If transfers occurred, Celeste Rowe controlled the accounts." There it was. The escape route Celeste had photographed. Victor described her as an employee who may have exceeded her permissions and concealed mistakes. He said the board had already prepared an internal report. Celeste stood. "I made the transfers. I left the accounts delinquent. I processed invoices I knew had not been properly verified." Victor pointed at her. "She is protecting herself." "No," Celeste said. "I'm naming what I did." She produced the access logs. Each transfer showed Celeste's employee entry followed by authorization from Victor's administrator credentials. The purge request carried his instructions. The draft incident report blamed Celeste before the deletion was supposed to occur. Victor claimed his account had been used without permission. Dana asked whether he had reported a breach. He had not. Changed the password? No. Did the approvals appear only on disputed transactions? Yes. Still, Victor turned toward the residents. "This woman wants control of the association. She is exploiting your fear to put herself in my chair." Ruth answered before Dana could. She walked forward with her delinquency notice and Cedar Rock Holdings' offer to buy the home where she had lived with her husband for 31 years. "They sent this the same afternoon," Ruth said. "Before I told anyone I was afraid I might lose my home." Aaron stood next. "On Monday, I helped him humiliate Dana. I repeated what he said because I thought protecting property values meant protecting my mother's home." He raised his mother's statement. "Her payment was moved to. I was useful to him because I spoke before I checked." Luis confirmed the unfinished work and danger near the electrical panel. Helen confirmed the altered records. Celeste confirmed the approval trail. Dana opened the final page of her folder. "I am not asking you to trust me because I am an accountant. Check where the money arrived. Check who moved it. Check who approved it. Check which owners lost their votes and who offered to buy their homes afterward." She presented the 23 signed challenges and cited the bylaw requiring suspension of any vote dependent on a disputed eligibility roll. The management representative reviewed the signatures. The contract vote cannot proceed tonight. Victor demanded that the board overrule her. 2 members refused. A third asked that Victor and Celeste surrender financial access pending independent review. Celeste placed her credentials on the table. Victor did not. The residents voted to suspend his access, preserve the records, restore disputed voting rights temporarily, authorize an outside audit, and order an independent basement inspection. Marcus left before the count ended. Someone suggested putting Victor's belongings in the hallway. Dana closed the folder. No. She remembered her coat caught beneath cardboard, and her lamp displayed like evidence of failure. We begin with the records, she said. Not the humiliation. The restriction on Unit 4C was lifted before midnight. Dana did not return alone. Ruth carried the white envelope. Aaron brought the brass desk lamp. Nina and Mr. Holloway took the file cases. Luis replaced the temporary lock under the supervision of the management representative who had sealed the HOA office. No one made a speech in the hallway. They simply carried back what had been placed outside as a warning. Dana unlocked the door and stepped into her apartment. Nothing inside had changed, yet the rooms felt unfamiliar. Her chair was still pushed beneath the desk. A mug remained beside the printer. The ordinary details made the previous 4 days feel more brutal, not less. Aaron set the lamp down. I should have checked before I spoke. Dana adjusted the shade. Yes, he accepted the answer. On Monday morning, the collection company received a notice suspending every Greenhaven Court account connected to the disputed transfers. No liens were filed. The residents removed from the voting roll were restored pending review. The basement inspection happened that afternoon. An independent electrician shut down the affected service area and documented moisture behind the panel. The repair invoices submitted by Lang Property Restoration were placed on hold. A different contractor opened the wall and found weeks of damage beneath a surface patch that had never addressed the source. The audit took 11 weeks. It confirmed that regular assessments from 14 residents had been redirected into ERF7. Penalties were then added to balances the association had already received. Several vendor invoices had been duplicated, divided, or approved without supporting work records. The same audit traced consulting payments from Cedar Rock Holdings and North Vale Residential to an office shared by a business associate of Victor Lang. The findings did not prove every suspicion Dana had written on her first spreadsheet. They proved enough to move the remaining questions beyond the HOA board. Victor was removed in a special election after owners reviewed the corrected voting roll. He did not confess. He called the audit political, blamed weak controls, and insisted that every decision had been intended to preserve Greenhaven Court. By then, his explanations no longer controlled the records. Marcus lost the restoration contract. The disputed invoices and property transactions were referred to attorneys and the appropriate investigators. The consequences continued after the residents stopped gathering in the hallway to discuss them. Celeste cooperated with the audit and surrendered every remaining copy of the transfer logs. Her cooperation mattered. So did the fact that she had knowingly processed the entries. She lost her position and faced a professional review. Dana never described that as victory. Ruth's false balance was removed, so were the charges against the other residents. Money taken through improper penalties was credited back over the following billing cycles. Mr. Holloway attended the next meeting instead of negotiating privately. Helen agreed to serve for 6 months as records secretary, with the condition that every set of minutes be published alongside its signed paper version. Aaron joined the Building Safety Committee. He was not given access to resident accounts. When nominations opened for the new board, several owners asked Dana to run for president. She declined. I don't want a better person holding the same amount of unchecked power, she said. Instead, she helped write the controls for the temporary board. Large payments required 2 approvals from unrelated members. Vendor relationships had to be disclosed. Contract bids remained available for resident review. Account disputes triggered an independent check before penalties, access restrictions, or voting suspensions could begin. The presidency received a term limit. The ledger received witnesses. 3 months later, Dana worked at her walnut desk with the apartment door open. Ruth stopped by without knocking and placed 2 coffees beside the printer. In the hallway, Luis explained the completed waterproofing repair to a group of residents using photographs, invoices, and the contractor's inspection report. No one had to accept that the work existed because a sign said it did. That evening, the temporary board held its first public financial review. The projector screen that once displayed Dana's alleged debt remained blank. In its place, a thick binder sat at the center of the table. Ruth brought the white envelope from Dana's apartment. Inside was the receipt Victor had let fall during the first meeting. Its edge was bent, and a faint shoe mark crossed the corner. ERF7 was still visible beside the transaction confirmation. Dana slid the receipt into a clear protective sleeve and placed it at the front of the binder. Not as a trophy, as the first document in the new dispute review procedure. Ruth opened to the next page. Where do we begin? Beyond the meeting room door, the 4th-floor hallway was clear. No boxes, no cart. The door to Unit 4C stood open beneath the repaired ceiling. Dana rested one finger beside the old confirmation number. Start with the first payment.